They say the dead rest in peace, but not all of them. Some walk among us, pale, silent, hungry. From the shadows of forgotten graves in the fog-choked forests of Eastern Europe to the neon alleys of modern cities, they stalk. Blood is their curse. Immortality is their prison. They don't sparkle. They don't love. They don't ask permission. They don't haunt dreams. They tear through them, ripping, slicing, draining. They hunt in packs. They feed in silence. And when the sun sets, no one is safe. Welcome to Project Black Garden, a Monsters and Myths podcast. Season 2, The Snapdragon Files. Episode 18, file number 666. The Vampire. I'm your host, Michael. Shall we begin? The history and mythology of vampires stretch across cultures and centuries, blending folklore, superstition, and evolving literary tropes. Their origins begin in ancient mythology. In Mesopotamia, some of the earliest vampire-like creatures come from their myths, such as Lilu, a female demon who preyed on infants and men at night. In ancient Greece and Rome, myths spoke of female spirits or monsters who fed on blood or flesh. In India, a revenant spirit that would possess corpses and roam graveyards had similarities to vampire lore. In China, the Zhangxi, a hopping vampire-like creature, was said to absorb a victim's life force rather than drink blood. But the modern vampire myth is most heavily shaped by Eastern European beliefs. After death, those who were unbaptized, committed suicide, or lived immoral lives were feared to return as vampires. These creatures would rise from the grave to drink the blood of the living, giving them certain traits, such as pale skin, fear of sunlight, garlic, and religious symbols, immortality, blood drinking, and the ability to transform into bats, wolves, or mist. With the only methods of preventing this curse was staking the heart, decapitation, burying bodies with a stone in the mouth, or turning them face down in the grave. Vampires have haunted our literature for hundreds of years, such as The Vampire in 1819 by John Polidori, or Carmilla in 1872 by Sheridan Le Fanu, and of course, Dracula in 1897 by Bram Stoker. Now, the symbolism of vampires have a range of fears and desires, such as death and the undead, sexuality and repression, immortality and the cost of eternal life, the outsider or the cursed, disease often tied to tuberculosis or plague. But if time has taught us anything, the legend of the vampire will never die. Now, when I first inherited my great uncle's secret files, I knew there'd be an episode on vampires. And this is one of many that are in these files. This one seems to be more personal for my great Uncle Sam. And this story is insane. So much so that this entire file was handwritten by my great uncle. And he titled it The Red Wake. And these are his words. The small coastal town of Kavala, Greece, had always lived by the sea and died by it. Storms, famine, shipwrecks, murder, but nothing prepared them for the emptiness. Nets returned full of tangled, bloodied clothing. No fish. Livestock turned inside out in barns. Local townspeople missing, presumed dead. Children began to have night terrors of a tall, handsome man with teeth like broken marble. By the time the Greek authorities managed to call in Special Ops Team Echo 7, a multinational special unit team that used to hire myself or a fellow member of Team Hell for certain unconventional threats and missions. But this time, I was rolling solo as I gladly took the reins of this special unit. I met the other 4 soldiers under starless skies just outside the ancient olive groves. With their night vision goggles and sweeping ultraviolet flashlights. There was Sergeant Bain. He was tall, dark, and British, and built like one of the biggest rugby players I'd ever seen. Staff Sergeant Stevens, South Korean, quiet and methodical. And 2 Greek soldiers, Staff Sergeant Elena and Private Flynn. After a quick assessment of each, we swiftly started on our journey. The first thing I noticed about Kavala was the way the city rises straight out of the sea, like a stone theater, layered in terraces that climb up the mountainside. It wasn't like a Greek port I'd seen in the briefing photos. This place felt old, watchful. Along the waterfront, where palm trees lined a curved promenade and fishing boats rocked gently in the harbor, at first glance, it looked almost peaceful. Colorful cafes, a few old men playing cards, but above all that, a massive, ancient fortress sat brooding on the hilltop. Its stone walls catching the evening light like a ancient crown. We could see a huge stone aqueduct cutting across the city like the spine of some ancient beast. It towered right over the modern buildings, 4 stories high, arches stretching across the main road. And for a moment, everyone on the team just stared, nervous at what awaited us. Once we moved inland, the roads narrowed into twisting cobblestone streets. Old Ottoman houses leaned over us, balconies hanging low, doors painted in faded blues and dingy greens. Personally, I thought it felt more like a maze than a town. There were shrines tucked into walls, old churches hidden around corners, alleyways just wide enough for each of us to pass through. Some of the locals watched us from upper windows as we passed by, silent, wide-eyed, like they knew exactly why we were here, but had no intention of saying the word. In that moment, I remember thinking one thing. This city wasn't built just to be lived in. It was built to keep something in. And in that moment, every member of the squad tightened their grips on their weapons. By this time, nearly 40 of the townspeople had either gone missing or were found dead. Almost immediately, we found a trail, footprints too large for any man, yet delicate, almost dancer-like, pressing deep into the mud. This trail ended at the cliffside ruins of an old castle-like monastery. Statues of saints were toppled, faces gnawed away, as if something had tried to eat holiness itself. Staff Sergeant Elena and Stevens exchanged glances as she said, "Looks like it's going to be a long night." Ignoring them, I pushed forward, making my way inside. Surprisingly, once inside, the old monastery looked especially new, like time had no consequence here. With weapons drawn and floodlights shining bright, we inched our way through the building. It only took us minutes before we discovered a room that led to a hidden crypt, sealed by ancient symbols. Sergeant Bain deciphered them quickly and warned us, "No gods, only death." After deciding that we didn't know how to open it, I tasked Private Flynn with blowing it open. He quickly attached explosive devices along all the support edges and told us to hold our breath. And right before he pushed the trigger to ignite them, the tomb slowly opened by itself. We all readied ourselves as we prepared to find corpses in the worst possible scenario. But instead, we found him. Tall and menacing, eyes like black embers that glowed with wicked, ancient cunning. His mouth split into a grin far too wide. Dark dreadlocks framed his impossible face. Skin like ancient porcelain, dressed in beautiful linen and gold thread of royal heritage. The creature stared at each one of us, slowly at first, but then speeding up as his eyes met mine with a devious smile. I knew immediately what we were dealing with. Vampire. But I'd never met one this old. Without hesitation, he pushed forward, floating toward us. Team Echo 7 fell back in a circle formation with weapons drawn and the special UV flashlights directly positioned on his upper torso from all sides. His otherworldly appearance threw me off my game, and I nervously demanded, "Hands where I can see them." The vampire cocked his head, amused almost, and in the most mocking tone, he said, "You point your little iron sticks, but your heart betrays you all. It drums loudly. You fear me. You all fear me. As well you should." Sergeant Bain, with a tightened jaw, asked, "Who the hell are you?" The vampire responded. "I had many names. Horum Aket, the Pallid Regent. To your priests, I was the curse upon Ra's golden sons. I've drained dynasties, emptied kingdoms. You are only men." He moved again, so gracefully it seemed the shadows bent to cradle him. And he continued, "Did they send you to kill me, little commander?" I swallowed hard, ready for his attack. But he continued, "You will break. You all break. Blood remembers its master." Sergeant Bain took a quiet step forward and threatened, "Not tonight, monster." The vampire slightly tilted his head and said, "We shall see." I quickly interrupted. "You're going to tell me what I need to know. How long have you been here?" The vampire's stare found me again, glowing softly through the shadows. He said, "I've told empires what they wanted to hear, and still they crumbled." I shook my head and said, "That's great. You've killed innocent people. You want to keep breathing? You start giving me the answers." It smiled even wider. "Breathing? Oh, my dear commander. I haven't drawn breath in over 3,000 years. But you breathe like a hunted thing. Loud, fast, delicious." Sergeant Bain leaned in, cutting me off once again, and he grumbled, "You're contained, trapped. You're nothing but a relic on a leash." The vampire's smile faded, and he quietly threatened, "You think you've leashed a god, but I am not trapped here with you, Sergeant Bain. You're trapped in here with me." Before I could react, all our UV lights burst, leaving us in complete darkness. He vanished immediately, reappearing behind Staff Sergeant Stevens, ripping out his spine in one brutal motion. A spray of arterial red painted the broken scene. Chaos erupted everywhere. Private Flynn unloaded a full magazine. Bullets stitched empty air before the vampire reappeared, slashing his chest wide open. He was then dragged across the ceiling, his boots kicking until silence. Staff Sergeant Elena hurled a grenade. The explosion sizzled against undead flesh, forcing the vampire to retreat with a hiss that shook dust from the rafters above. And for a brief second, we thought we had actually done something. I roared out orders, trying to regroup, but the creature was everywhere, his laughter echoing impossibly from every wall and crevice. At one point, I turned just in time to see the vampire cradling Sergeant Bain's head, whispering, "Sleep, little lamb," before snapping his neck like dry twigs and drinking blood that poured from the wound. Sergeant Elena and I repositioned ourselves, dug our boots in, and attacked. Sergeant Elena tackled him from the side, driving her large silver knife up under its ribs. The vampire screamed, clutching her head, trying to rip her skull apart with sheer force. Blood ran from Elena's nose and ears as she screamed back, her eyes wild with fear. I pulled my sidearm, jammed it under the creature's jaw, and fired until the magazine clicked empty. The vampire's skull exploded in a shower of black, its body twisting, convulsing. With one final inhuman shriek, it collapsed into a pile of rotting robes and ash. Quickly, I pulled out a flare and ignited what was left, letting the flames burn wildly, trying to catch my breath. Sergeant Elena started to weep, clutching her wounds as she tried to walk up to me, slipping in the pools of blood everywhere. And just before she reached me, she fell to the ground, revealing 2 puncture wounds on her neck and another bite on her left wrist. Her eyes closed, and just as I thought she was dying, they fluttered back open, her irises now molten red and hungry. I tried to reload my sidearm, but it was too slow. With monstrous speed, Staff Sergeant Elena smashed me aside, grabbed what was left of Sergeant Stevens, and vaulted out through a shattered window into the moonlight. A few days later, on a neighboring island, 3 bodies were found in a fishing boat, bloodless and ravaged. To this day, locals speak of a woman who walks the cliffs, singing in a voice older than the sea. The god was slain, but his daughter now walks the coast, and she is always hungry. I spent more days than I prefer to admit looking for Staff Sergeant Elena to either end her or possibly save her. And though we've had a few close encounters, I've never officially come face to face with her ever again. Now, the crazy thing about the Snapdragon files is that there's a good chunk of them that pertain to vampires. Apparently, they're everywhere. This was my favorite file from the group. But the interesting thing is that my great uncle Sam seemed to document all these encounters himself in his own handwriting instead of the usual professional typed up documents. I found that very interesting because it seems like maybe my great uncle took these encounters more personal, and after reading most of them, I think it's because he never found Staff Sergeant Elena. And knowing the man that he was, he couldn't live with himself. Now, I haven't decided if I'll do another vampire episode this season, but there will definitely be more in the future. And if anybody out there has any experiences with vampires or the creatures of the night, I would love to hear those stories, your thoughts, and your experience. So please reach out at pbgharvest@gmail.com, or you can talk to me on any of my socials. Gardner Michael on Blue Sky or Twitter X, and now on TikTok. Just send me a message. Now, more recently, one of my listeners had asked why I hadn't been discussing some of the drama from my private life that seemed to plague the first season of Project Black Garden. And that's because I feel like I was making things worse. Too much stress, too much pressure, and way too many sleepless nights. Now, that doesn't mean I won't comment or share with you anything out of the ordinary, especially if this podcast or my personal life is threatened. But things have been a little quiet, though I do believe I'm still being watched or tracked. I know that sounds paranoid, but unfortunately, I'm in the business of paranoia now. Just know I'm documenting everything that I find suspicious. I'm protecting myself and all the files I have. And in worst case scenario, if something should happen to me or anyone close to me, I have set it up that these files, everything I have, becomes public. Very, very public. On a lighter note, what's your favorite vampire movie? Mine is the 80s classic, Near Dark. Truly bloody and fun. Okay, fellow gardeners, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Next week's Snapdragon file tackles one of the most popular cryptids in recent memory. He's every kid's favorite internet sensation, Slender Man. As always, my name is Michael, and you have been listening to Project Black Garden, a Monsters and Myths podcast. Season 2, The Snapdragon Files. But be warned, monsters are real. And the worst ones, they bite.